For years, Ami Brown carried the weight of silence. The camera showed a devoted wife, a patient mother, and the heart of the Alaskan Bush people clan. But behind the quiet smile was a woman holding on to years of betrayal, disappointment, and heartbreak, most of it coming from those closest to her. After surviving cancer, losing her husband, and nearly losing her life again, Ami has started to speak. What she revealed shocked even those who thought they knew her best. Because when Ami finally looked back, 5 names stood out. People who changed her life forever, and not in the way the world imagined. The early divide, Matt Brown. Before the world ever learned about Ami Brown's cancer battle, her deepest pain came from something quieter. A distance she could never quite close. It wasn't the kind of distance measured by miles or oceans, but by silence, misunderstanding, and the slow unraveling of a bond that once seemed unbreakable. Matt Brown, her firstborn, had always been the soul of the Brown family. He was the boy with the restless heart, wild, unpredictable, but full of light. To Ami, he was the one who brought laughter to long, cold nights in the Alaskan wilderness, who carried the weight of the family when the cameras weren't rolling, who still called her mama, even when he towered over her. But somewhere along the way, that laughter turned into echoes, and the strong bond between them began to fade into something she couldn't mend. The first fracture appeared in 2016. When Matt entered rehab for alcohol addiction. The show barely mentioned it, but for Ami, it was a silent crisis. She prayed for him every day, calling him when she could, trying to remind him that no storm was too strong for family. When he returned home, she believed things would finally get better. But addiction has a cruel way of returning when you least expect it. 2 years later, in 2018, Matt checked himself into rehab again. This time, the family had already left Alaska to move to Washington so Ami could receive cancer treatment. Matt stayed behind in California, far from his mother's side. For Ami, who was battling for her life, the separation cut deeper than any diagnosis. She was fighting to stay alive, and watching her son drift away at the same time. Then, in 2021, everything changed. Matt went public with accusations that his late father, Billy Brown, had withheld his earnings from Alaskan Bush people. He claimed he never received his share of the show's profits, that while his family appeared to live comfortably, he was left struggling and broke. "I was cold, hungry, and alone," he said in a video message. Those words spread quickly, and they broke Ami's heart. Billy was gone, unable to defend himself, and to Ami, it felt as if Matt's anger was aimed at everything she had built alongside her husband. She didn't respond publicly. She didn't argue. She simply went quiet, retreating into the same silence that had once defined her strength. But the story didn't end there. In 2019, 2 women, one a show coordinator, the other a former friend, accused Matt of assault. Though prosecutors declined to move forward, the accusations were devastating. The Brown family closed ranks, refusing to address the scandal. Privately, Ami was said to be shattered. Her once proud son was now the center of controversy and estranged from nearly everyone he loved. Even Bear, who had once looked up to Matt, admitted in interviews that they were no longer close. By 2020, Matt's name had vanished from the show altogether. Fans asked where he was. The family said little. To Ami, the silence surrounding her eldest was unbearable. She had spent her life keeping her family together through poverty, illness, and scrutiny, and now the family she had fought for seemed to be slipping through her fingers. Noah Brown, the betrayal that broke her. If losing Matt to addiction was like watching a slow storm, what came next was a lightning strike. Noah Brown had always been the gentle one, the soft-spoken, thoughtful son who rarely raised his voice. Among all her children, Amy once said Noah was the most like her, quiet, loyal, a little shy. That's what made what happened in 2025 so devastating. In April of that year, Noah called the police, not for himself, but for his mother. He told officers he feared for Ami's safety. He said she was acting confused, that she might have been introduced to meth by her daughter Rain and Rain's husband Josiah. He said she wasn't taking her medication, that she was couch surfing with them in a remote cabin called Liar's Cove. He even told authorities that Josiah carried weapons and that things were spiraling out of control. For Ami, that call wasn't just a misunderstanding, it was betrayal. Her son, the one she once held as the family's emotional anchor, had put her name into an official police report. She had survived cancer, pneumonia, and the death of her husband. But this was something different. This was her own child calling her unstable. The moment that report reached her, something in her shifted. She didn't argue, didn't fight, didn't respond publicly. But those who knew her said her silence said everything. And this wasn't Noah's first time taking action against the family. In 2024, he and his then-wife filed a restraining order against Rain, accusing her of harassment and substance use. He described moments when Rain allegedly offered Ami medication she shouldn't take or made violent threats toward him during filming. His court filings painted a fractured picture of a family at war with itself. To Ami, it must have felt like her home, the one she'd built from nothing, was now turning against her from the inside. People close to her said she didn't hate Noah in the beginning. She pitied him. But over time, pity turned into quiet heartbreak. It wasn't that he doubted her strength, it was that he doubted her sanity. For a mother who had sacrificed everything to keep her family together, that was the wound that never healed. Mima Branson, the mother she lost twice. Long before fame, long before the wilderness, there was a teenage girl from Texas named Amora Branson. She was 15, young, curious, and still trying to understand what love meant. When she met Billy Brown in 1979, he was 30 and full of promises about adventure, freedom, and destiny. Within months, they were married. Her mother, Mima Branson, allowed it, reluctantly, but only under one condition. Ami had to finish school. She never did. And after that, she never came home. From that moment, lost her daughter, not to tragedy, but to isolation. For the next 3 decades, Ami's family didn't know where she was living, how she was doing, or if she was even alive. Her brother, Les, said Billy made sure of it. According to him, Billy controlled everything, her letters, her calls, even her memories. When Les once asked Billy why Ami had cut everyone off, he said Billy's answer was chilling. She belongs to me now. To Les, that was the moment his sister disappeared for good. When Alaskan bush people began airing in 2014, Earlene recognized the face she had been missing for 30 years. Older, thinner, but unmistakably her daughter. She watched the show in silence, hoping Ami might one day reach out. But she never did. Years later, when Ami was diagnosed with stage 3 lung cancer in 2017 and given only a 3% chance of survival, Earlene tried everything to contact her. She called hospitals, sent letters, and begged producers for information. No one answered. By 2020, Earlene's health had collapsed. She had Alzheimer's and pneumonia, and her memories of Ami blurred between television and reality. Sometimes she would look at the screen and think her daughter was already gone. Other times she would smile faintly and say, "Tell Amy I forgive her." Before she passed, she made her son Les promise to deliver that message. But she never forgave Billy. She believed he had stolen her child and turned her into someone unrecognizable. When Amy later spoke about forgiveness, she said it was complicated. That forgiveness isn't about forgetting, it's about surviving. And maybe that's what she meant. Because when she finally looked back, her mother wasn't just someone she lost. She was someone she was forced to leave behind. For Ami Brown, that wound never closed. It just became part of who she was. Les Branson, the brother who wouldn't stop searching. If Ami's mother represented the past she lost, then her brother Les represented the past that refused to let go. For nearly 40 years, Les Branson lived with a question that haunted him. Why did my sister disappear? To him, Ami wasn't just family. She was the little sister he used to walk to school, the girl who laughed too loudly at his jokes, the one who promised she'd always stay close. But in 1979, that promise vanished with her marriage to Billy Brown. For decades, Les searched. He wrote letters that were never answered, left voicemails that were never returned, and mailed family photos that always came back unopened. Each attempt ended in silence. He watched Alaskan bush people not for entertainment, but for signs, a glance, a mention, anything that might suggest she still remembered them. But every episode only deepened the ache. There she was on screen, a symbol of faith, survival, and family unity. Yet the people who loved her first were nowhere in that story. In 2017, when Les learned about Ami's cancer diagnosis, he saw one last chance to reach her before it was too late. But he didn't have her phone number, her address, or any direct contact. Desperate, he turned to social media. Inside a Facebook group called Alaskan Bush People, The Facts, The Fair, Les posted a heartbreaking message. He wrote, "In the end, I have only Facebook to send a message, hoping somehow Ami will know that we cannot even write to her as she suggested, and to tell her how much we still love her, miss her, and are sorry we couldn't do more." The message went viral among fans, but Ami never responded. To Les, it wasn't anger he felt anymore. It was resignation. He had come to believe Billy had deliberately isolated her from the world. He wanted her all to himself, Les said. He succeeded for 38 years. When their mother Erlene died, Les promised her he would never stop trying. But years passed, and Ami's silence remained unbroken. To outsiders, it might seem simple, a misunderstanding, a family grown apart. But to Ami, it was more complicated. Every word she didn't say to Les was a reminder of the control she'd once lived under, the loyalty she couldn't betray even in grief. And maybe that's why when she finally named the people who had hurt her most, Les's name appeared not out of hatred, but heartbreak. Because in her eyes, his relentless search kept reopening the wound she had spent a lifetime trying to close. Robert Mann, the lawsuit that reopened every wound. When Billy Brown died in 2021, Ami thought the worst was behind her. She had lost her partner of more than 4 decades, the man who built the life that made her both famous and isolated. In his absence, she tried to focus on peace, her faith, and her recovery. But the peace she longed for didn't last. 2 years later, the past returned, not as a memory but as a lawsuit. In April 2020, a man named Robert Mann, a doctor from Tennessee, claimed that years before Alaskan Bush People ever aired, he had given Billy $20,000 as an investment. Billy had promised him a 10% share of the profits from any books, documentaries, or creative projects tied to the Alaskan wilderness family. Later, in 2009, a second contract followed, another $10,000 for 10% of all future earnings from Billy's creative work. But as the show became a massive hit, Mann said he never saw a cent. When Billy passed away, Mann didn't walk away. He went after Ami instead. In 2022, he returned to court demanding that Ami be added to the case as the executor of Billy's estate. Legally, she was now the person responsible for everything her husband left behind, his assets, his debts, his legacy. The lawsuit wasn't just about money. It was about reopening a life Ami had spent years trying to protect. Her lawyers argued that the federal court had no jurisdiction, that the matter belonged in state probate court. But the damage was already done. The media pounced, headlines resurfaced, and Ami's name was once again tied to Billy's most controversial choices. For Amy, this wasn't just another legal headache. It was emotional whiplash. After surviving cancer, pneumonia, and the loss of her husband, she was now being forced to defend his memory, and by extension, her own. Those close to her said the lawsuit took a heavy toll. It reminded her of the years she had spent in Billy's shadow, loyal to a man whose ambitions sometimes came at her expense. It also forced her to face the truth that the life they built together wasn't as untouched as she once believed. There were contracts, debts, and promises that had never truly died. When the case finally quieted down, Amy withdrew from public appearances. Her health was fragile, her trust even more so. For the fans who saw her as the strong matriarch of Alaskan bush people, it was easy to forget that strength has a cost. To her, Robert Mann wasn't just a man with a claim. He was a symbol of everything she had tried to leave buried: the business, the lies, and the pain that came after Billy's death. And perhaps, when she finally named the 5 people who hurt her the most, Mann's name was the one she added last. Not because of what he did, but because of what he forced her to remember. For Amy Brown, pain has never been just about illness or loss. It's been about love, loyalty, and the people who tested both. After everything she's endured, the betrayals, the silence, the endless fight for survival, she still stands. Maybe that's why her story hurts so much, because in the end, she never stopped trying to love the very people who broke her heart. Do you think Amy will ever truly forgive them? Or are some wounds too deep to heal? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories just like this one.